to welcome everybody here this evening. It's a very special celebratory evening. And my name is Sue. I'm a curator here at the Migration Museum. And I'll just fill you in very quickly about the story of the Migration Museum before we get to the important part of this evening. Our aim as a museum is to tell the story of migration in and out of this country in the past and right up to the present moment, because we want to honour the amazing, rich diversity that migration has brought to this country from the word go, absolutely from the word go. And we also want to tell stories of people who don't normally get their voices heard, who maybe live in the background or live on the edges of society and don't feel included. And we want to welcome them and open our arms to them particularly. We spread the word of those stories as wide as we possibly can in a network of other museums who are involved in migration. And we are looking for a permanent site, a permanent home. But at the moment, like good migrants, we migrate from place to place. And we found ourselves initially in Hackney, and then we moved from Hackney to Shoreditch, and then from Shoreditch to Lambeth, and here we are now in Lewisham. And we are so proud and pleased to be in the heart of Lewisham, right in the middle of the shopping centre, which I think is the very best place for a museum to be. You do your shopping, you pop into the museum, and you realise it's all about you, and then you come back again. So we are proud to be part of Lewisham in this year as the London Borough of Culture. And we are also pleased to be able to tell the stories of Lewisham people and to welcome, to give young artists and business people who are based in Lewisham a platform to tell their stories. And perhaps you've seen in our Taking Care of Business exhibition that we have presented the stories of lots of Lewisham business people. So before I introduce our artists here, I'd just like to thank, because this is really thanks to Lewisham, I have to get this right, Creative Enterprise Zone. Have I got that right, Matt? Lewisham Creative Enterprise Zone and Shapes Lewisham, who have sponsored the artists displaying the windows. Now, my colleagues might not agree with me, but I personally think the museum windows are probably the most important part of the museum, because they lure people in. People look in the windows and think, oh, yeah, I'd like to go in. They inspire, and they tell the stories of what we like to tell inside. They're out there on the windows. And even when we were closed, putting up our exhibition, the windows and the art displays there were bright and shining and intriguing people. So I feel very important that they are the face of the museum. And that brings me to the artists. We've actually had 6 artists in there at the moment, in there since recently. We've had Belen, who gave us feisty and great Lewisham women. We've had Elizabeth Lecourt, who gave us beautiful dresses in the shape of maps. And then we've had Nadina Ali, who's here tonight, so pleased to see. She's very, very much part of this opening tonight. And she presented, maybe you saw it, I hope you did see it, this fantastic question, where are you from? And she did it in big 3-dimensional letters against a background of the world. And she's from the Comoros Islands. And she said to me, you know, that's a question which you might, what do you feel when somebody says to you, where are you from? Do you feel proud? Do you feel homesick? Do you feel annoyed with the questioner? You feel irritated by that question? So she brought up a lot of those answers for people. And then we had an artist called Justine Formentelli, who's French-Italian, who gave us beautiful watercolour paintings of refugees. And she described those as invisible people, people that we don't notice on the streets. Maybe you've had that kind of feeling yourself. So it's just touching something very sensitive about being a refugee in this country. And then to our two artists here. So I can't tell you about their work, so they're going to tell us about their work, Himani and KV. And I would like to thank them for their wonderful creativity and their generosity in putting their heart and soul of their practice, their artistic practice, into our displays, which very much, I think, mirrors the heart and soul of what we are doing in the Migration Museum. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have some questions to ask KV first. And the first one is the title of your exhibition, Too Foreign for Home, Too Foreign for Here. Tell us a little bit about that title and what that means to you.
I think it's a title that resonates with a lot of people in this room at some point in their life. My family and I are ethnically Chinese, and we were born in Vietnam. And I moved to Canada when I was 7. We weren't well off, but my father hired a private teacher to come teach us Cantonese and Vietnamese. And I realized afterwards that he did that because he didn't want us to be discriminated by the other kids. But of course, as a kid, you don't know what's happening here. My parents lived through, of course, 20 years of the Vietnam War between 1955 and 1975. So that itself, do you feel at home when your country is under civil war? We immigrated to Canada when I was 7. I'll speak a bit about the migration journey in a bit. For me, I assimilated with the Canadian culture, hence the Canadian accent. But for my parents, they resorted to doing manual labor because they didn't speak the language. So they supported the family with my aunts as well. We integrated into a Chinese Vietnamese community. Slowly, I lost my Vietnamese language. So, you know, being in Canada, I felt Canadian, but people wouldn't look at me as being Canadian. When I visited Hong Kong for the first time in 2016, I thought, okay, well, I speak the language and I can get around, but it just feels different. And then I went to China, and that was a disaster because they didn't care for my Cantonese. They didn't care really for my English either, and I couldn't speak Mandarin. So it was, you know, this was 15 years ago. I was doing sign language. It didn't get anywhere. And then in 2010, I went to Vietnam for the first time since I left 23 years later. And my language comprehension is of a 6-year-old, just understanding broken language. And although I can really communicate with people, it felt and tasted like home. And now I'm in the UK. I feel very much at home here as a Londoner with a British and a Canadian passport. But when I first moved here 12 years ago, you know, same Queen, different accent, but actually there's so much subtlety with the culture that I had to get used to.
I'd love to ask further questions about that, but let's move on. The main piece in the exhibition is called Resurrection, which is the large work on paper, and the performance piece with the burning signs. Tell us a little bit about that. How did you get into performance art, and what does it mean to be what are the elements of the performance?
So there's a QR code outside. If you scan it, you can listen to the, watch the 8-minute video. That performance is a reenactment or reenactment of our family journey from Vietnam to Canada. My dad was drafted to the Vietnam War. Thankfully, he has glaucoma, so he was dismissed, and my mom was shot in the hand while fleeing carrying her sister. We were sponsored to Canada, but my dad's side, they were on a boat. They were part of the boat people. They were on the Duong Island refugee camp in Malaysia for over a year, and they got sponsored to Toronto. And my mom's side, they were more fortunate. They were also boat people, and they were in Singapore for 3 months before they went to Calgary. So these are the fortunate stories of people who made it through the boat journey. So this is an emotional and psychological interpretation. With the performance, there's sounds sourced from online and archival material of. There's one clip called the Ghost Tape Number 10, which is the U.S. used it as a psychological warfare, where they played it in the forest at night. It's just like kind of humming, spooky noises. There's images and videos of bombs coming down. And the one part of the performance, the piece of paper is burned at the end. And that's in a homage to, I think it's Buddhism, Confucianism, where you burn joss paper as to your ancestor during their death dates or during Chinese Lunar New Year and other significant dates, but also a reflection on Western culture of rise of the phoenix from the ash. And just to quickly say how I got into performance art, my partner and I went to the Venice Biennale in 2017, and I saw a photograph work of Tibor Hajjas, who's a deceased Hungarian political artist, and I saw these body images, and it was just felt so urgent that I went home, cleared out all of the space in front of the sofa, and just did some photographs, and then I pitched it to a curator, and he said to perform it. I said, what? So within 2 months, I became a performance artist. This was five years ago.
The sculptures on the right-hand side, they look very heavy, and when I first saw them, and I saw them hanging from a cotton string, I thought, you know, they're heavy, but actually they're very light, aren't they? And to me, they're like council estate blocks that I remember as a child, and still are now, and sort of balanced in strange ways. What do they mean to you, the sculptures?
The story of the Vietnamese diaspora, 2 million people left Vietnam between 75 and the late 90s. 20,000 ended up in Britain. So during the Thatcher era, they were dispersed around England. But eventually people had a second migration, and they went to the larger cities, predominantly London and predominantly the councils of Lewisham, Hackney and Deptford, which is why you have the Vietnamese communities, particularly foods. When they first moved to these council boroughs, they squatted in council blocks, and eventually the council gave them the property. So these council blocks, balanced in very particular ways, is my interpretation of the life of a migrant living in very precarious situations when you first come to a new country, I guess living close to the poverty line. The titles of the pieces are Structural Integrity, Simply Supported, and Intention. And these are terms that I am very familiar with as a structural engineer, which is my background. So I think with the understanding of materials in this other part of my career, I'm using awkward materials to make people look at it in a different way. It's uncanny that it's doing something else. Sort of like, who am I to be here at the museum?
Well, you definitely are here. Yeah, tell us about the paintings in the exhibition. There, I can see they're on rusted steel plates, and I can see maybe a self-portrait of you and maybe of your family, and a kind of grid-like structure overlaid. Well, tell us about the paintings and the use of the steel plates.
Again, the materiality, I'm really interested in the surface and the rusting, and I think this comes from the engineering background. The three portraits are of my British working visa from 2012, a family portrait of us when we're in Vietnam, and then a portrait of my siblings and I. When you see a portrait, you see like the facial structure very clearly, what the person looks like, but you don't know anything else about the person other than if they have wrinkles and what age they are. So in this case, I've overlaid it with an aerial view of a refugee camp. And the image, the eyes are deliberately blurred so that you see the portrait, it becomes universal of the experience of a migrant, the experience of my extended family. And those are the three portraits. There's a one piece with the Lewisham clock tower imposed in a room with three classrooms, three classroom chairs and tables. And that to me is the experience of a young family who settled here, Vietnamese or otherwise.
So just to finish, okay, yes, so personally, what does it mean to have all these people here listening to you now and to be in, to be displaying your work in the Migration Museum?
It feels amazing, actually, and I want to thank the Migration Museum, the Lewisham Council, and everyone who's here. This is our diaspora, this is our tribe. Yeah, it's really a privilege and honor to explain and share your life journey with your peers, and really to connect your story because it's so prevalent with what's happening around the world. This is my first museum exhibition, and it's very fitting that it's in the Migration Museum. I think as an artist, you constantly have to break through these glass ceilings of being accepted, because there's not really a blueprint in the art world of working a number of years to make it. So we're trying to navigate through all these hoops, and so this is I'm very proud of this opportunity and this achievement. So thank you, and thank you everyone for coming to share our story.
Thank you. I know the title of your exhibition is Finding Threads and Tracing Lines, and I know it's very personal to you, this exhibition. So tell us a bit more about how you came to create it.
Well, I'm going to start by saying that sadly my mother passed away 2 years ago on Saturday. She died of the coronavirus, and it was a very, very difficult time for myself and my family, and I felt quite ripped up and very low, as you can imagine. I'm very close to my mum, but something. My mum was born in 1935. And so the reason why I'm talking about the COVID part and her dying at that period of time, the first wave, is because myself and many others, some of whom are here, didn't really get the opportunity to enact the funeral rites in the way we'd have liked to, wanted to, in respect of our families. So this was very difficult. It's very, very difficult. It was very difficult for me personally. So after about 2 years' time, like probably from about November last year, I started to feel differently. I had a new energy that came about, and I wanted to tell my mother's story. I wanted to celebrate. I wanted to bathe myself in the joy and share the joy about her life, her achievements, her talents. So I started drawing. I knew I was going to make a book. I've always known I was going to make a book about my mum's story, her life, because she talked about her stories, and I kind of saved them in my head since I was a little child. She'd go over the same stories, and I'd love it. I absolutely loved it. It was like a little animation in my mind that I kept, and she'd revisit. She would have joy, and I would share that with her. So that's kind of how it started, and then I approached there was a call out for exhibitions, and then I had this amazing opportunity, which I was a bit tentative about really going for, because I didn't know if I was ready, but it took me on a bit of a path really, which has been really important to me, and I do very much appreciate that.
Tell us a little about your illustrations and how the telling of the stories
Okay.
are central to your work.
Could you change it on to the next one, please? Yeah. So the illustrations, as I said, they each carry their own story. My mum would talk about her granddad, Alvis, who used to go up a coconut tree, would climb it quite quickly, even though he was very old. If you've never seen that, you really should. It's something else, it really is. It's incredible. But he wouldn't come back down because he felt that he saw God up there. Okay, so it'd be into the night, they wouldn't be able to get him back down. So, that was him. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, maybe he did see God up there. I don't know. How is anyone to know? Or his version of God. Anyway, there we are. So, and this story was really about a sort of cheeky moment where my mum broke the rules. She did little rule breaking throughout her life, and she smuggled in some sweets for the boarders who lived at the school. And it's the moment where the teacher discovers, the booty. And my mum talked about it, and you could see in her face she was back there. And I was there with her, and it was like, she was kind of cheekily pleased anyway. It was kind of badge of honour that she'd gotten away with this. But also, it was, a shameful thing and all the rest of it. And then this is the fisherman who used to bring fish every single day and call Malu Malu in the morning. And she just talked about him very fondly, really. And in fact, every person she ever talked about, she talked with a fondness and a connection, and that's something that I really loved about my mum, is she had a connection with people. Like everybody, like people in Sainsbury's or in the street, or just everybody on a very equal sort of footing, which I thought was really special. And this one is where. This is to do with their car. It's an Austin, anyone? Cambridge, that's it, Austin Cambridge. And I got the colour right, everything. I said, Mum, is this what it looked like? And she said yes. And she talked about the dusk time and taking her auntie to go and see the about piano lessons, and that they were being played properly. I'm going a little bit, it's emotional. Okay, right, so that's that.
Okay, thank you. And tell us about the sewing patterns and the beautiful sari blouses of your mum that you displayed.
Well, I meant to say one more thing
Go on.
actually. Sorry, can I? Yeah, so before we go into that, I just wanted to say that I've really enjoyed drawing my mum's objects. These are scissors that she used for dressmaking, and her dressmaking tape. And I think we have things that are very objects that are innocuous, really, to others, but they have a particular meaning. They carry meaning after somebody has left us. perhaps. And as I was drawing and really looking very closely, I was looking at the rust, I was looking at this, thinking about the sharpness of the scissors, really going into it and sort of travelling into a moment. And I think that's the wonderful thing, and I'm so glad that I'm able to do this, where I can draw and paint and go into my own sort of portal, I feel, where I'm really sort of connecting with my mother, and sort of reaching out to her. So it's just a pair of scissors and tape measure, but it means a lot to me. Yeah, thanks. So, okay, over here. Yes, so my mum's pattern books over here. When I was a child, she'd get her pattern books out, and I found them quite mesmerising, really, and really technical. She talked about maths, and she talked about that she felt she was a dunce at maths, she said, and she used to have to wear a dunce cap and in the corner of a classroom because she was that bad at maths, and that's sort of ritual humiliation that went on in those days. Yeah, but when I looked at her books and I saw how technically they were put together in this amazing way, a very clever way, I saw her talent, and I said to my mum, "Oh, I'd love to display these one day. They're really special." She didn't think anything of it. But I'm so glad that I've been able to do that. I've been able to realise that dream. And these are my mother's sewing tops that she made, hand sewn, tiny, tiny stitches. And again, I mean, if you look at the colours, they're like jewels, and I was always fascinated with them. So being able to display them, to show them off, to celebrate, it sort of, it kind of builds me up, makes me feel good that I've been able to do it. And it feels very special to me to have this opportunity to do that. So that's that one.
And tell us about the mixed media piece, Unknown Depths. What about the imagery within the piece?
Okay, so this piece was a bit sort of different to the others, really, in that I didn't know where it was going when I started it. I was going to just see what the sort of paper said to me, or listen to music, see what came out, really. Lots of things going on here. I was really thinking about my mother and my father to a certain extent, coming from one country to this country, not knowing where they were going to. There was obviously no internet in those days, and it would have been an imaginary place. Maybe she thought everyone wore a bowler hat or something with a pen. I don't know, but it was a very sort of stylised idea, I think, probably. So she came. She took a leap. Anyone who goes to another country that they, haven't lived before. She didn't know anybody else here apart from my dad, who she'd only known. She'd met him 3 times. She didn't know anybody else here. So she came here. Things are different. In Sri Lanka there are elephants that walk in the road. Monkeys instead of squirrels, picking the mangoes and whatnot. So I was just thinking a lot about her, what that took to come here. The excitement, the journey, but also the trepidation, the fear, the unknown. And I thought about the sea as in terms of the, not knowing the depths of what's underneath, what is lurking, what might be treasure, what might not. So that's what that's the sort of symbolism here. And here, you can't really see it, but there are Sinhalese letters, and the letters are sort of crashing against. This is a representation of Galle Fort in Sri Lanka, where my mother came from. And the letters form words which say unknown depths, and they come in and out of the water. And it's really to do with language, identity, how language is important for identity, how it can be lost, how it's held on to, and what you need to let go of and hold on to, really, with language. So that's what this is about. And then the shells are to do with treasure, really. It's to do with what you know, treasure. I love shells. And when I was a child, that felt like the most magical thing, to find a shell on the beach. So those hands are meant to be my hands. I drew them for myself. And they are, so when I was in Sri Lanka, I collected the shells, and then when I went home to London, I flushed them down the toilet because I thought they should really go back. Yeah, so I don't know if they got there. So there we are, so that's what this piece is about.
So just to finish, I know you've really appreciated being able to display your work at the museum. Is that what's going to come next after this, or as a result of this?
Well, I'm going to, when everything dies down a little bit, I'm going to go back to writing and illustrating my mum's story. I've got lots to do. I need to travel back to when she was at school in a convent, and some of the nuns there that she met, and lots of other tales that she told me. I wrote everything down. So I want to also go to Sri Lanka. Things are very difficult there at the moment. When things become more settled, I will go back to where my mum was born. I will travel. I will, see what comes from that, and I will continue my book. And I will, try and get published or self-publish, and that will be for my children and their children and anyone else who may be interested. Yeah, so that's my plan.
Great. Thank you, Himani. And would you like to mention your workshop on the
Yes, I
7th
would.
of May?
So there's a workshop on the 7th of May. We're going to be making little books. And if you'd like to come along, you're very welcome. It's really a chance for you to maybe focus on your own mothers who are past or present, or grandmothers, or other important women in your life, that you can focus and think about them a little bit, and maybe make some collage, or it may be that you have a recipe. It might be a poem, it might be something very personal to you, a little saying that they said. Because I think it's about the focusing, really. It's about the giving yourself the time to really focus on somebody and what they were about and who they were. It might be a joke, it might be, I don't know, it could be anything. It's so personal to you. So anyway, that's on the 7th of May. And I believe there's a sort of a booking system for it.
It's free of charge.
It's free of charge. Thanks for pointing that out. And I've just got another something I wanted to say.
Absolutely.
That I'm just going to have this card because I don't want to forget anything that I want to say. Can't even find the card. Okay. Just that I am really so hugely grateful to have had this opportunity. And I really do thank everybody who's come here, who's taken time to be here tonight. It means a lot. It really does. I've loved working with KV. He's such a generous and patient person. And also hearing your story has been really moving for me personally. Thank you for the Migration Museum and all its funders doing this wonderful work. I know the lights have come back on. I just wanted to say that Lewisham, I do have a big connection with Lewisham in a sense, that when I was a child I came here, and actually I was talking to a few friends about how this used to be a British Home Stores, then Littlewoods, and then this and that, and it has its own, its own history. But for me, this area I grew up in. You know, I'd go over that way to get my records when I was a teenager. You know, get my damned records or whatever. My mum would be getting Al Stewart or something, really. Yeah, and CNA. And this has got. I think Lewisham is a very special place. You know, in the 70s, you had the Battle of Lewisham. Some of you, may know about or could find out about, perhaps, where the community stood up to racism, really, to I think it was the NF. I was quite young then, but it was, people standing together, really. So I think there's a sort of heart in Lewisham. I think that's really, really special and good. And I love that the communities live and work alongside each other. You go up Lehigh Road, the whole world is there. And that's a wonderful thing, and worth celebrating, and it's a joy to have been able to have this opportunity. So thank you so much.